Hey there, we're going to react to a WinterStarcraft video about Stormgate. He had a interview with Tim Morten and Tim Campbell. You can check out his channel here. He does the StarCraft too. Supposedly he's a little bit salty, but aren't we all when it comes to competitive gaming? So we're going to watch through his interview with the two founders of Frost Giant Studios' latest game, Stormgate.
Hey everybody, I'm Winter, RTS enthusiast and generally salty nerd, but I'm excited to bring you a few more qualified nerds here today, announcing the newest and best hope for the entire real-time strategy genre with no pressure whatsoever. The co-founders of Frost Giant Studios. We have Tim Morten and Tim Campbell.
How's the volume? All
Thank
right?
you for joining me. What is Stormgate?
Basically, brand new RTS game, very much trying
They're
to
quite
stay
quiet.
true to the things that make RTS great, while also being more approachable to a broader audience. Should feel very familiar to players of Blizzard RTS, but at the same time new because it's a new engine, a new universe, new factions, and
Can you hear them
some new
clearly?
gameplay
Because I can
innovations.
add a
Maybe I'll pass it over to Tim.
Again.
We're super excited to share news about Stormgate and be able to talk about it. It's a game that we're super excited about. It's a brand new universe, like Tim was saying, that's a mixture of science fiction and fantasy colliding into a future Earth that's gone through an apocalypse, and players are stepping into the shoes of human
Very
resistance that are
atmospheric.
fighting against these demonic infernal invaders coming into their world. And it's high stakes, epic scope conflict, and something that we think is going to be really exciting for players to experience.
Well,
Yeah.
actually,
Oh,
if I
go
can
ahead.
jump in there, because you can tell
He's keen.
which one of you was more focused on the epic scope story. Sorry, Tim, but Tim, could you give us a little on your background, especially in the RTS universe?
both
And I
Tim.
think you know which Tim I'm talking about in reference to that.
It sounds good. So at Blizzard, I was the lead campaign designer
Warcraft
for
3,
Warcraft
that's
3
the one.
Chaos and the Frozen Throne.
Founding of Duratar
Worked
campaign.
with a team of excellent level designers to build all of the campaigns as well as the competitive maps for those games. And so I have, before that, worked in other franchises like Command & Conquer. I worked on Red Alert 2 and the start of Generals and worked on the campaigns there. And this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I've spent years and years doing this, and since leaving Blizzard, I've been dreaming about what I would do if I were able to give back to the genre that I love. And Tim and I have talked about this for years leading up to the formation of Frost Giant. And so being able to finally now unleash all of these ideas and creativity in Stormgate is something I'm super excited about.
That is really cool to
Now
hear.
we have an idea.
And now on the more, I guess the general RTS accessibility and how do you market an RTS today? Like, what about your background, Tim M?
Got it. I most recently was at Blizzard for 5.5 years on StarCraft 2. I left at the end of 2019 to team up with Tim C to start Frost Giant.
Right.
Also spent a bit of time back in the mid, I guess, 2010 timeframe on Command & Conquer, working at EA. And
So he wasn't on the
have a lot of love
StarCraft
for
back then,
all
then?
RTS games,
'Cause that's when
Blizzard,
StarCraft came out,
and
StarCraft 2.
otherwise. But yeah, kind of come from an engineering and production background, and just helping to steer the ship here at Frost Giant.
Overall, I'm just going to hit you with a bunch of frequently asked and constantly speculated on RTS and just general gaming questions. So just whoever wants to take it, quick response, and then we're going to dive a little deeper later. But free to play. Yes, no, maybe,
Yes.
something asterisk, whatever.
Absolutely.
Free to
Absolutely.
play, yes. Single player. You already alluded. What does single player look like?
All of our game modes are intended to support social play, but we're conscious that there are some players who want to just play by themselves. So our campaign does support co-op. That's a big innovation for us, and we think that
It supports it, but you
players
don't have
really get a
to.
lot from that.
As the base game supporting co-op, like for example in like in StarCraft 2 with custom campaigns, you can now play co-op, but that would be something you're looking to build in.
Yep, you got it.
And then there's a separate co-op game mode you're planning on?
Yeah, so campaign is really story driven. And so each chapter of the campaign will introduce new characters, new plot points. The open ended co op mode is a more repeatable experience that's about leveling your heroes. And, it's got a number of kind of
Wait.
long term.
That's an important point.
Co-op mode is a more repeatable experience that's about leveling your heroes.
Leveling your heroes. So we get heroes and they can level, aka like Warcraft 3. That's very important for me. That's a big important for me because obviously if you get the heroes, you get invested into the game because you're behind the character, behind that hero, behind the abilities that they can do. You're interacting with them all the time, be it their story or their actual capabilities, their voice lines, their movements, everything they look like. So giving them more power, aka the leveling up aspect, feels like you're going on their journey. So yes.
And it's got a number of kind of long-term growth potentials that make that mode a lot of fun to keep playing over and over for a long time.
Reminds me. Well, you guys learned a lot in StarCraft 2. I know you have Kevin, who was previously the lead designer of co-op at StarCraft 2
Monk.
and also some of the most fun commanders there. So I'm expecting a lot to come out of that.
I hope
but
so.
also,
in one
of
versus
course,
one.
multiplayer.
We'll see.
Yeah, so on the competitive side,
Beher, really? Why are you asking that with 2 question marks? Why are you even asking that? This is dev interview? Nah, no, it's not.
we will continue to provide the high skill 1v1 experience that RTS is known for. We're putting a lot of effort into making that responsive, providing a great ladder experience, integrated tournaments, which will be a lot more robust than
That's
what we were
really
able
interesting,
to
the
provide
tournaments.
previously. But we're also adding a 3v3 team-based competitive experience that is really its own.
You mentioned 3v3, no 2v2 though necessarily, and hasn't mentioned 4v4
mode, separate from the way that 1v1 competition works. And that's another innovation that we're excited about.
So I'm going to dive into this more later, but you're saying a different, unlike in StarCraft 2, for example, like a different balance for the factions, which will be the next question, different balance for the factions and different multiplayer modes?
Yeah, I mean, these are brand new factions with brand new units. So definitely the balance will be new and unique, and we'll work with the community to get to a point where there's a meta that feels good. But for 3v3, this is an opportunity for us to take some of the mechanics that are emerging out of the open-ended co-op mode with heroes that have different abilities and kind of even encourage different play styles and bring them into a direct competitive mode in 3v3. So really a bit of role differentiation becomes possible in this mode, which is...
So maybe it's just the heroes that are different, because you got to think, oh, how are they going to manage that? Like, if they... let's just say, for example, there's a footman. In 1 versus 1, the footman does 11 to 12 damage, but in 3v3, the footman supposedly is a bit too strong for whatever reason, so then it does 8 to 9 damage. That would be kind of tricky to sort of balance every single unit, but he just mentioned heroes, kind of focusing on those mostly. Maybe you get specific heroes for 3v3 that might be, different to 1 versus 1. Not sure.
Is one of the unique things that we're starting to explore.
Yeah, with 1v1, we're able to go right at the RTS experience that we know and love from competitive, and really try to optimize and refine that and lean into something that we know has a really
That's
special
a good
place
question,
within the
Bahu.
genre. 3v3 is an opportunity for us to try some new things and push that in a new direction, where we're not just doing the traditional 2v2, 3v3, 4v4 model where it's just additional player start spots next to each other in a larger competitive map, and go, and then the community just figures out some meta around that. But otherwise, the roles are the same. We're leaning into trying to make that its own mode beyond just increasing the player count. So different things to do on the maps, different objectives potentially on the map. We're really experimenting with a lot of things in that mode in order to help make it be something that is fun for people to play together and to strategize about before going into matches, and have that extra social layer to it.
Well, that I'm very excited to see what that looks like. I think that's going to get a lot of people.
Almost seems like 3v3 is
excited.
more of a focus than
And
one
that-
versus
that-
one.
I mean,
Although it's
tangentially
news, so
leads
that's maybe why
into
they're talking about
the
it.
Big question is how many factions and any details around that.
We are having 2+ factions. We have 2 that are part of our announce, the humans, which we're not revealing their name yet formally. They're just the humans. But then we have the infernal hosts, which are the Terrans, exactly, which are the demonic invaders. And we are working on more, and we'll have more by launch. But we're gonna talk more about those later on.
Okay, so a lot of TBD there, but at least 2 to start.
More than 2.
More at 2 and then some.
Yes. There you go.
And now map.
How many do you think they're going to go up to? I would have thought 4 would be like the maximum. Because balance obviously is going to be very tricky with every single race or faction that you add in. It gets more and more complicated. You guys don't think they're going to settle for 3? You think 4? Okay.
Editor. A lot of
Absolutely.
user-generated content. I mean, there are entire genres of games that came out of Warcraft 3 and to an extent StarCraft 2. So, map editor and mods and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And sorry for stepping on you right there. This is something which is really near and dear to my heart, because I have spent literally many, many years working on RTS content in a variety of tool sets, some which were never released to the public, and some which obviously were with Warcraft
Does he have a secret tower defense? We need to play it if he does.
and StarCraft. And I have, every step of the way, when we have released an editor to the community, I have been blown away by what the community has done with it. The quality, the variety, just the innovative ideas that on the dev team, us as designers never even would have come up with in a million years. It just brings extra creativity and new perspectives to gameplay. And so I loved being a part of that with War 3 and directly saw a whole community grow up.
Whoa. So they're showing off the skins and the assets there with the models, how they sort of colorize them. Okay. It's got a Warhammer 5 with all those different color paints.
Around there at Frost Giant with
It gives you a size scale of the ships.
Stormgate, we are absolutely trying to go down that same path. We will be releasing the same tools that our designers and our dev team are using to make the campaigns and the game units. We're releasing those to the public as well. And I can't wait to see what they do with them. And
That's what we're excited about.
Looking at ways to improve how content is made, improve how content is shared. For example, our level editor is integrated directly into the game client as opposed to being a separate standalone application, so that you can toggle with a single press of a button between gameplay and editing a level. And so it's very, very easy to
That's
be able
really,
to
that's going to make it, oh wow. I wonder if, shame Nick isn't here. He would love that. Because in Warcraft 3, especially if you're doing the Reforged, it takes longer to load. So every little change that you make, you've got to then load the map to see if it makes a difference to what you've done trigger-wise. So basically, it sounds like you could just test it almost live to a degree.
For example, our level editor is integrated directly into the game client as opposed to being a separate standalone application, so that you can toggle with a single press of a button between gameplay and editing a level. And so it's very, very easy to be able to be painting down terrain or putting map objectives and then immediately be playing it without even a load screen, and then hopping right back to continue editing and tweaking it. So it makes the level.
That sounds like a change that he made specifically because it used to annoy him so much.
Design process a lot faster and a lot more iterative.
Well, that is a lot. And I think a lot of people, I know some of the most passionate community in StarCraft 2 is the map making community. And while often feeling neglected, they do still
thank you,
put in
Nicholas.
so much work. And of course, Warcraft 3. And I'm actually going to circle back to
1 year,
esports
I
because at
spend
first
my money
you
to the
talked about so
island.
much. I want to talk
I
about
hope
the
you have
game
a new
engine.
food.
I
Smiley
want to
face.
ask,
Cheers for the next
and I'm probably
years.
going to ask the question
Smiley
again. How do
face.
you beat StarCraft 2?
Thank you.
StarCraft 2, the most smooth, like snappy, responsive RTS, probably at this point over a decade ahead of its time. How do you have a chance against
Not
that?
as good as Warcraft 3, though.
Yeah, StarCraft 2 was a wonderful engine, and James Anhalt, who is our chief architect, played a big role in creating that StarCraft 2 engine. I think StarCraft 2 engine does show its age when it comes to the graphics front. I think in many cases it is CPU bound rather than GPU bound. It's fairly monolithic from an engine architecture perspective. There's not a lot of threading that engine takes advantage of. Moving to Unreal Engine 5 really gives us the latest and greatest toolkit when it comes to the graphics side of things. But Unreal Engine 5 is very much designed for a different kind of game. And so we've had to build our own separate standalone piece of technology that we're calling Snowplay. And Snowplay is a deterministic simulation engine that James has spearheaded that is kind of the next generation of techniques that James employed when he was working on the StarCraft 2 engine. And so
It feels like the most you get from Unreal Engine 5 is mostly the lighting and the shading. Like, the graphics in that are fine. I got no problem with those. But I wouldn't say, like, the StarCraft 2 looks super dated or anything like that. You know, super bad. The units pop and all that was really good. So you got, like, more of a kind of immersive campaign feel, I feel like, in this almost.
really, there are many examples from the pathfinding, even just the game logic simulation, where the benefit of experience from having done this before has enabled Snowplay to be more efficient and just easier to work with for us as game developers. So we're really excited about the technology base that we've been building. And to be fair, this is a big part of what we've spent our time on since originally announcing the studio. It's not a small undertaking to create an engine that can accommodate thousands of units and elegant pathfinding, crisp responsiveness. These are things that really took substantial development effort on this end.
I love every part of what I just heard, and I want to talk about it for 3 hours. But I'm moving on. Esports. StarCraft 2 is probably, to be a little, I guess, self-serving. StarCraft 2 is probably the beginning of the newest and most mainstream generation of esports, like with the advent of streaming.
I think that's fair to say, because it did pop off with Twitch.
A bit of a
big time,
crossing the
or Justin
Rubicon
TV.
situation where you bought this game in a box, and then everybody started downloading them online for free. And StarCraft 2 was kind of in both worlds. Where do you land with Stormgate when it comes to esports, and how much are you embracing the live support idea of esports?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think right out of the gate, we have planned for esports to be part of Stormgate from inception, and it really is a big part of our vision to integrate esports more directly into the game client, so that whether you're a player who is playing against your friends or somebody who wants to compete within your school or within your state, all the way up to the professional circuit, that's possible to do from within the game client. In a word, yes, esports, definitely part of our vision and something that we're passionate about. You talked about the ongoing support nature as it relates to esports, and
I feel like every developer is very scared to hit the topic of esports because they don't want to sort of toot their own horn too early. You got to kind of let esports happen somewhat naturally, organically, but they'll always sort of say, "Oh, we're there to sort of support it." I think, obviously, they all secretly hope it does kick off because, what game doesn't really? Because esports, you think about how big like League of Legends and all of that is, because in Dota 2, mostly because of esports, because the audience is there to watch it.
And this is one of the things for esports, but for Stormgate as a whole, that I'm most excited about, that we've been able to design this product from the outset with an eye towards continued content. We're not building one box and then maybe an expansion pack. Like, we're building a game that will continue to deliver content to players for years. And the story that we have put together already has a very long-term arc planned. But that means content for not just campaign players, but also co-op players, also competitive players. All of these are woven together into the.
Does he sort of potentially mean there could be like competitions? You know, like World of Warcraft has like mythic dungeon competitions between two people going through the dungeon as fast as possible. Whatever, there was something like that, co-op versus AI. There's like two teams and who can sort of defeat the computer the quickest or whatever it might be.
Vision that we see carrying Stormgate for many, many years to come.
And I love the crossing the Rubicon analogy that you made there. StarCraft, like you were saying, was designed originally. StarCraft 2 was designed originally as a box product and pivoted into free to play, shifted into the model that it eventually went into, but without necessarily the foresight going into it that could have changed how certain decisions were made. That I think Blizzard did a great job of navigating that transition. That's an awfully difficult one to go through and still be successful at the on the flip side of going through that. But that is one of the benefits that we have building a new game from scratch in this era, is that we have this model in mind from the get-go. So from day one, we're able to make decisions around the gameplay and faction design. We're able to make decisions around the modes, knowing ultimately where we're going to get to. We're not shipping an expansion, not knowing what the next one's going to have, and then kind of figuring out new stuff to add in that expansion, not knowing what the next one's going to have. We're able to actually methodically have a long-term plan that we're going to be able to dovetail feature rollout and content rollout towards, so that it stays as cohesive and tightly woven as possible.
I'm getting a little bit confused here though, because these guys are obviously good friends and they sort of started this company together to work on the game. They're the founders of the company. They've put themselves like maybe in a position where they're both sort of like of a similar level. Because if you thought about that, like if you had a best mate or something like that, you go create a company, who's like the president? Who's in charge? Like, is the president in charge or is the CEO in charge? I'll let you guys sort of work that out amongst yourselves. But I was just looking at the titles there, CEO and production director, or president and game director. Like, who's like the top? If you were to put someone at the top.
Did StarCraft 2 go wrong? And by go wrong, I mean, where did it fail to live up to what you think it could? And overall, you think you can
Bobby's
do
not in
better
charge.
with Stormgate?
One of the biggest things that evolved for me over the course of my time on StarCraft was just having back and forth dialogue with the community. And you were part of many of those community summits as well. So I think you experienced this evolution on StarCraft 2 along with me. But when I came into Blizzard, I think we were still operating in a mode where the dev team worked very much behind closed doors and put content out that the community hadn't had a chance to really provide feedback on. And so the feedback happened late or very, very close to launch. And over time, we got better at that with Star 2. But, I think with Stormgate, now we've got an opportunity to involve the community before we even release the game, really before our own decisions are all made.
I was saying this to Pracky, but because the game's going to be free to play, it's going to go into beta 2023. I suspect, remember it's on Steam as well. A lot of things on Steam take a long time before they're actually truly finished. We're in pre-alpha at the moment. As you can see at the top right, they're pre-alpha and development assets. So the beta is probably going to be potentially early access, early alpha sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? Or alpha at least. And then it's going to move into beta. So you're probably going to be able to play this game for quite a while before there's any sort of true release. It's always kind of like the upside for developers in the sense that they can have people test the game and get the game on track for when it's fully finished. But it's also the downside that you're essentially bringing out a game before it's really truly finished. You don't sort of get it like you used to, where it's boxed up, it's good to go. You play it. That's how the game is meant to be. Obviously, developers say they wish they could make more changes and stuff like that back in the old days for the boxed creations, but it's still generally the idea is that, you know, the game is where it's supposed to be and you're there to play it. But really, you're going to probably get like a year or so, maybe even potentially, to play it. So I always do worry about that.
And that means that these
it kind of
Reddit
kills the
conversations
vibe
that
a
we've
little
had, conversations like this and other, you know, video chats that we have with prominent figures in the RTS community genuinely help inform the decisions that we're making. And that's really powerful. It's kind of a new way to go about game development. It's one of the reasons that we're announcing now instead of right before the game launches, because we want the benefit of this time to have an exchange of ideas with the RTS community.
Yeah, and I think another area, and it's not where StarCraft went wrong specifically, but I think it's been a struggle of the RTS genre in particular, is the RTS genre has a perception as being the hardcore genre, right? It is something which has a high barrier to entry. It's maybe
It
intimidating.
is if you
to
play at the
players
highest level of
coming in here.
StarCraft.
People may try it for a little bit and then bounce out. In fact, I know a lot of people who enjoy watching StarCraft 2, but don't consider it a game that they could play themselves. And I think that speaks to a really high skill ceiling in StarCraft 2, which is fantastic and within the genre. And it's something we absolutely want to be a part of Stormgate as well. But I think this is something true of the whole genre. I think the genre can be made to be welcoming to new players, can be made to help them enter the game experience, help them advance, going from a total non-player to a basic player, going from a basic player to good and on the way from good to great. And I think we're looking at ways that we can step in as developers and provide tools and a better experience so that more people can have a smooth entrance and experience.
That's smart. I wouldn't worry, Holly. There's always going to be complexity at the highest levels, to the point that only a few people can manage it anyway, no matter how sort of simple the game gets. But what he's basically saying is he's addressing an issue that is important. Like, for RTS to thrive and still stay alive, it needs to be able to hit newer players that aren't necessarily so familiar with RTS. Because when I grew up, I was playing Age of Empires and all that beforehand. I was playing Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, you know. You sort of built learning how RTS works. Whereas these days, kids are just like, it's a Minecraft or Fortnite or Among Us. And, you know, they don't have so many RTS games that they just naturally play as part of their progression of becoming like a teenager, then into young adulthood. So what he's basically saying is they're probably going to implement quality of life features that can make it more accessible for people like that to get into the game in the first place, so that when they jump into a game, they're not going to be overwhelmed by the natural sort of complexity that is in RTS. They're going to have a lot of the stuff sort of managed maybe in the early stages, and then if they want to get better, then they can sort of get off those training wheels. It's like you wouldn't put a kid straight on a bike. You put them on training wheels and such, and you work your way up
into Stormgate, which I think will be healthier for the overall player base and the overall ecosystem around the game and around esports.
Do you have any examples of specific ideas you're thinking of for new players getting involved in the game?
We're leaning into ideas like, can we provide automation that maybe is less efficient than doing things manually, so that new players coming in can have an easier time learning the ropes and kind of getting into things, but there is still that room to improve with how your targeting abilities or triggering abilities or microing your units. You still have that mastery and skill expression there as well. Similarly, we're looking at the onboarding experience, and this is something that I worked on before with Warcraft 3. I did the prologue campaign for Warcraft 3, which at the time I was super stoked about. I'm really proud of it. I actually still am today. But at the time, I felt like that was the best tutorial I'd ever made. I'd worked on some tutorials for other games as well too. And I did that at the end of development. And right at the end of development, we finally brought in our first tester right before we shipped. And the first thing they did was bump a mouse. It scrolled the screen off into the black mask. And they stood there waiting for the game to start, and then started clicking and didn't understand why the game was broken. And so I realized in that moment that my experience as a developer is fundamentally different than the experience that a brand new user coming in would experience playing RTS for the first time. And so we've tried to start working on our onboarding experience early in the development cycle so that we can get feedback and we can go through iteration and improve it with real people. And we're trying to make sure that it is a better experience that paces you into the game experience better. And so those are just a couple examples, but this is a constant ongoing topic for the dev team.
I'm just going to jump in with one other kind of big area that I think impacts this approachability factor. But by nature of being social, I think players these days often come into games because their friend says, "Hey, come check out this game with me." And we for StarCraft 2 designed co-op assuming that players already knew how to play RTS. There's literally no onboarding for co-op. And so time and again, I hear about players whose first experience with Star 2 was through co-op because their friends said, "Hey, come, play this game with me." They get in, like every other video game they've played, the first thing they see on the screen is their character in the game. Instead, there's like a top-down camera. They have no idea what they're supposed to do. They try the WASD keys or the arrow keys. Those don't do what they expect. Like they're just completely out of their element. And so
this is obviously a big
they
concern.
rely on their more experienced friends to teach them how to play this game. And if their friend's a good teacher, maybe they have an okay experience. But
what they're basically saying is the kids today are just scrubs. They're bad. They got their easy video games where they only have to press one button or 3 buttons at most. They need to get good.
Like we as developers didn't provide them any tools to get into this game and learn it if they've come in with their friends. And now that we know, and it should have been obvious, but we learned from these things. Now that we know, there's an opportunity for us to make that experience so much better. And right away, when there's somebody else in there with you, at least who's friendly, that takes away some of the intimidation factor. And whether you're playing co-op or you're playing like 3v3 multiplayer, the fact that you're on a team takes some of the responsibility off of you as an individual and distributes it to the team. It's like right away, these are things that make it more approachable, I think, for mainstream players.
Yeah, I love having people I can blame for my losses and failures.
There we go.
Who doesn't?
But I guess that kind of pivots a little into the big criticism, and I think this is another
He's a
thing
4v4
that is
RT
based
player.
on StarCraft 2's success and lack of success in different ways, is RTS is a dead genre. None of us here are getting any younger, and neither is the majority of my audience. But how are you bringing truly new players in? Yes, friends, of course. For people who play StarCraft 2, those are few and far between already. But in general, you're saying people want to play RTS, not just people who played before, but new people want to play. And let's say they don't have someone like me or someone who just wants to get their friends into the game. Why would they look at Stormgate?
Yeah, a lot of, I think every game community goes through a period where people are saying dead game. And it was so
They do that after like
fascinating.
one day.
StarCraft 2 already.
2 hours, dead game.
It was so fascinating for me, at Blizzard, getting to see the player numbers. And the reality was the community was so stable, incredibly stable. But the perception from the outside was, oh my God, these games are bigger than us.
Oh, come on, Holly. Why you got to do me like that?
So our game must be getting smaller. And the truth was, the game was very, very stable. But League of Legends took off, grew to 100 million monthly active users and beyond. More recently, Fortnite has been huge. There are all of these trends where genres explode and then kind of plateau. And those plateaus have been remarkable for some new genres. So, I think first thing RTS needs is a new game. Like people are not going to try something that's a decade-old game because it's just
Sag for
it's
Warcraft
old.
3.
So I think right out of the gate, we have this opportunity for a lot of people to come in and check out Stormgate. You talked about bringing friends into the game. If I think back to the early days of League of Legends taking off or, PUBG prior to Fortnite, it really was that virality of people saying to me, like, hey, you got to try this game. I think Elden Ring lately has been a great example of people saying, hey, you got to try this game. And I love the Elden Ring example because Dark
XQC played the game of Warcraft 3 for. I don't believe that. Didn't know you played it. Why would he do that? He just goes straight in and play free for all. Of course, it's not going to go well for him.
Souls had such an RTS-like
so-
reputation of being kind of punishing to play, and I think you hear about it and you sort of think of it with respect, but you're like, that's probably not for me. It's too punishing. But Elden Ring comes along, and suddenly those Dark Souls players are like, yeah, no, this is the one you got to try because it's it's open world. It's like this is the next generation. You're gonna love this, and clearly that virality that surrounded Elden Ring has caused that community to just explode in the best of ways. Become a massive, self-sustaining community, and so our hope is that.
I feel like if Elden Ring did anything, it certainly got itself a mention from basically every game developer that's ever existed, be it good mention or bad mention. I don't think there's a game developer that hasn't like acknowledged Elden Ring in some way.
By being thoughtful in all the ways that Tim talked about, in trying to provide a better onboarding experience for players who are getting their first exposure to RTS with Stormgate, that we can have that Elden Ring moment for RTS, that we can help bring players into the genre who try it, love it, and stick around, because we all know it's a great genre. We just have to get them to come in and not be intimidated about it.
So what I'm hearing is that Stormgate is the Elden Ring of RTS. All right, that's a good title for this.
It's
But
clickbait stuff.
I'm very glad to hear. I hadn't really thought of that comparison. Originally, StarCraft 2 I got into because my World of Warcraft arena partners started playing it. I'm like,
Awesome.
why are we not playing arena today? It's like, and then I canceled my WoW subscription because I wanted to play a real game, of course. But but yeah, I guess I'm a little hypocritical in saying that people won't find other people to get into it because at the end of the day, you need at least one other person to play against. I think it is time. It's time to talk about when
Hammer
can
time.
I play the game. All right, you show me this fancy cinematic. You got all this crazy art. You got a lot of good words here. But when do I get to play Stormgate? Do you have a roadmap? What does it look like? And most importantly, what do I need to do to play Stormgate?
I love this question. So I'm going to answer it backwards. The thing you need to do to be ready as soon as the game is ready to play
Have a computer.
Stormgate is to sign up for the beta at playstormgate.com. And that will get you onto the list. We're going to start small and increase the number of players in
You
the
guys
beta.
done that yet?
Starting somewhere mid next year is where the beta kicks off. And
You say mid next year.
somewhere mid next year is where the beta kicks off.
So they're really giving themselves some time. So you got like almost a year.
As I mentioned, we really wanted to bring the community along with us through the development cycle so that we're getting the benefit of feedback even when we're in the design phase. And right now, we've done a whole bunch of technology implementation, all of that snowplay work that we talked about. Now we're in what's called a vertical slice phase, where we're defining the visual look of the world. We're working out the core mechanics in the engine. We're getting into experimenting with different units so that we can make some decisions about what the composition of each of the factions is going to look like. And so we're expecting that work to carry us until about middle of next year, where we're ready to start letting people in the closed beta. And the reason we stage the beta from small to large is,
well, they can start off with 3 people because then they can do the co-op versus AI.
first off, just to make sure that everything is actually working and that we're giving people a good baseline experience. They're not going to get a crash a minute or those kinds of challenges. We want to get an increasing amount of balance feedback so that we're able to incorporate.
Oh, sorry, I get so massively distracted by that door.
We want to get an increasing amount of balance feedback so that we're able to incorporate that feedback and also give a good gameplay experience. And then there's a bunch of back-end services just in terms of our game servers, the matchmaking, all of the components that make up the live service that we want to apply stress to gradually so that we can understand where the things we need to work on are. So that's the game plan.
If this is something that you or your audience is interested in and would like to support, we really are encouraging people as much as possible
Wishlist?
to go to Steam and add Stormgate to your wish list. This is something which actually doesn't seem like it might be that big of a deal, but alongside
Steam.
registering for the beta, this is a very important step for supporting us. It matters a lot in a variety of different ways, and it doesn't cost anything. So that's an active way that you can support us.
It's the same. Yeah, it's pushes the algorithm. It's the same thing why YouTubers, and I haven't done it yet, but asked to thumbs up the video and subscribe and share, because it really does actually make a difference to the algorithm, and obviously quite a lot so for the Steam wishlist, because that's like the number one thing like developers talk about on the Steam is like push the wishlist.
In the meantime, but as we get to beta, we will be going through scaling the number of players who are coming and being able to play it, going through phases as we lead out to launch. And really, that beta phase is something which can extend or compress based off of the feedback we're getting and how ready we feel it is for a full launch. And so the start of the beta is really what we're focusing everyone around and encouraging people to sign up for it. And then we are going to invest in really listening to feedback during that time and iterating on the game to make it as polished as possible before launch.
I do want to point out just so wishlist on Steam, so you will be available.
Thank you very much, Makilio, for the sub. All right.
New RTS hype WTii spy.
Hype.
On Steam. That is a big question for a lot of people. And will there be other platforms, Epic, independently, or is it limited to Steam?
Yeah, we're not planning to limit to just one platform, but we're for now definitely confirming Steam, and which other platforms we wind up on, we'll figure out as we go.
And you did mention getting feedback and up until the beta. Does this mean you'll be continually releasing more information, or at least things to give feedback on?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a pretty.
Actually, Tarkham, probably more likely. I mean, I should try to probably get a new PC, I suppose, closer to the end of this year, earliest, or sometime next year, with that in regards.
Recent topic from earlier this week on our subreddit. So the Frost Giant subreddit, r/FrostGiant, just around different approaches to phasing game launches, kind of what we've just been talking about. And we'll have more topics between now and the beginning of the beta. There are always things that we're talking about internally where we feel like it would be helpful to get insight on how the community thinks about it.
Yeah, this is so important to us. One of the big reasons that's factoring into when we're announcing, the fact that we're announcing Stormgate now as opposed to in a year or 18 months from now, is specifically so that we can start talking with the community around this game, its feature set, its content, the game universe that we're building, and to get that dialogue and that feedback going.
Which means we get to build the game. Give them all the ideas. Don't go crazy giving them all the wrong ideas, though.
We, I think, literally just passed a 2-year mark from the company's inception. And that was 2 years from when it was just Tim and I and a Starbucks cup in each of our hands, right? Sitting outside Starbucks saying, let's do this. And so this is a pretty rapid pace to actually get to being able to share the game's name, share the game's setting, start talking about the game. But we are doing this specifically to get feedback and to interact with the community to make sure that we're building the game as best as we possibly can. Most of the big studios would probably wait 4 years, 5 years before announcing, right before they launch. But if we did that sort of model, it would eliminate any ability from the community to give us feedback that actually would impact the game. And so this is hopefully the start of a conversation with the community that we will carry all the way through the beta phase and help shape the game.
Well, thank you. So playstormgate.com and wishlist on Steam. Those are the top 2 things. And then continually check the subreddit as well as Frost Giant on Twitter for any regular updates, especially if you want to give feedback directly. Do I have it right?
You got it. That's perfect.
That's perfect.
Oh, there you go. So it's a free-to-play game, but believe it or not, I've heard games are not made for free. How do you make money?
Yeah, we're going to leverage the learnings we had from taking StarCraft 2 free to play in 2017. And Philosophically, how we approached that was trying to provide players the opportunity to experience each mode of the game without having to spend anything. So for Stormgate, the first campaign chapter will be free. The initial heroes for the game will be free. You'll be able to play competitive multiplayer for free. If you find that there are parts of the game that you enjoy where you want more content, whether that's more campaign story, more heroes, cosmetics.
Did you say heroes?
Those will be.
Oh, okay. So heroes might be behind, kind of bit like more along the lines of League of Legends then. So campaign missions, that's understandable. Like if they're going to create DLC for the campaign, then they'll split it up and you'll get separate missions. A bit like the Nova one from StarCraft 2. I remember that was like a purchasable, and probably even co-op. I was thinking the other day potentially if they're going to do co-op versus AI, like in Crossfire Legion. Like I really like that level, that co-op versus AI mission where you're sort of like defending your allies, but at the same time you've got to look out for yourself and you've got to build up for stronger units because the enemy keep getting harder and harder and they come from different angles. So you've always got to be on your edge. And I thought that was great, but there's only one of those levels. So the more they can implement, I'd be kind of happy to sort of like pay a little bit of money for that if they put the effort into sort of like creating more content.
Campaign story, more heroes, cosmetics. Those will be available to purchase, but you don't have to spend anything.
So let's just go back and hear that again.
Without having to spend anything. So how we approached that was trying to provide players the opportunity to experience each mode of the game without having to spend anything. So for Stormgate, the first campaign chapter will be free. The initial heroes for the game will be free. You'll be able to play competitive multiplayer for free. If you find that there are parts of the game that you enjoy where you want more content, whether that's more campaign story, more heroes, cosmetics, those will be available to purchase, but you don't have to spend anything. You can have access to all of those baseline pieces of content for free and continue to enjoy those with no obligation to us. And so the burden's on us to make sure that we're producing content that's so good that people feel like they want to buy it.
If you do that.
And then we're going to have loot boxes within loot boxes that have NFTs inside them.
Also. Oh, that was obviously
that's the least I would expect.
Is when can I get a Stormgate NFT on my phone?
Just to be clear, we are free to play, but not pay to win. We're not going to be selling power, and there won't be any NFTs in this. So like Tim was saying, we may be old-fashioned, but we want to build a game that's fun to play. And it's so fun that you want to play it and that you can purchase more of the types of content that you enjoy as a player. We really wanted to build a game that's a game first and then support that with the business model, as opposed to really starting with a business model and then trying to design a game that can maximize that as much as possible. So we hope that everyone enjoys Stormgate and that finds the way that they like playing this game as much as possible and then goes from there.
I've taken up a lot of your time and you guys have been very efficient with it over the last couple of years, but just last point, anything you guys want to say about Stormgate, anything I didn't cover that you're excited about, fill in the blank here. What do you guys have to say about Stormgate?
For my side, it would just be to express gratitude to you and to the rest of the RTS community for coming along on this journey with us. I think there are big expectations to live up to. StarCraft 2 is an amazing game, and we're going to do our best to make a different but also amazing game. But we still have a lot of work to do, and we really appreciate all of the input and feedback that we're getting along the way. So thank you, and thanks to the community.
Yeah, I want to double that as well. We literally would not be here having this conversation with you. Frost Giant would not be building a game like Stormgate if it was not for the community within RTS and within StarCraft 2 specifically. You guys are great. You have supported this type of gaming for so long, and we are humbled, and we definitely feel the responsibility on us to deliver a game.
He's talking to me specifically.
That you know and love. And so we are doing our very best to build this game for you guys to enjoy. And we really just want to say thank you to everyone for your support.
Thank you guys for sticking with me for this interview, and I look forward to hearing more. PlayStormgate.com and Wishlist on Steam. Those are the top 2 things, and then write some essays on Reddit because you guys will actually read them, which is crazy to me. But thank you, and good luck. Have fun, you guys.
Thank you so much.
All right,
You know
there you
that
go.
the balance designer for StarCraft 2 was David King.
Oh, he gets an interview as well with Kevin Dung. Right. Sneaky, cheeky little thing. So that's coming up, another video. But we've also got a video from Back to Warcraft to watch in regards to sort of a full lengthy discussion with Kevin Dung, known as Monk in that community. So thank you very much, Winter. Check out his channel here, WinterStarcraft. Obviously, thumbs up the video. And that'll be in the video description below if you want to check him out. He does StarCraft 2 content. Hence, the StarCraft questions. Makes sense. If I was interviewing them, then I'd probably be asking a lot of questions, mostly from the aspect of Warcraft 3. So, cool. Good video. I like the questions. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of vagueness with the answers, but they are very happy to sort of, talk. They're not sort of hesitating too much. They are constantly flowing with information. So just got to get more specificity with the answers. Like, sort of, for example, like the heroes being purchasable. Are those just heroes that are purchasable for co-op versus campaign missions? Or are those going to be for a competitive ladder? Because that's going to cause a lot of conflict if some people can access heroes that can be used in 1 versus 1 that you can't. I would have thought they wouldn't do that, but you've got to kind of, if you really want to get down to it, you get those specific points. But yeah, cool. Thanks for watching.